Well, he thought he was condemned to life in prison, but now convicted killer Sean Campbell is hanging on to a glimmer of hope. In March, an appellate panel ruled in favor of Campbell's claim he was coerced into pleading guilty and that his lawyer withheld evidence that could have cleared him.
Now his case is headed back to court. WENY-TV's Jane Park spoke with Campbell in prison and has the exclusive story in part 1 of Journey to Justice.
Wendy Correctional Facility in Alden is a maximum security prison. It's been home for Sean Campbell of Yates County ever since he pleaded guilty to killing Rhonda Bilby in September 2004. And it's where he fights every day to clear his name.
I'm not the one who murdered Rhonda Bilby.
He says he has the proof in a murder for hire plot someone knew about days before Rhonda's lifeless body was found outside her home in the town of Bath.
He states in there that the body would be found in the woods to decompose, just like it was.
Sean learned of the alleged plot only after he was locked up for life and requested his file from his then attorney.
When he brought the files, a big box like this, huge box.
In it, he found correspondence between a prison inmate and Steuben County District Attorney John Tunney. In a letter dated September 15, 2004, 12 days before the death of Rhonda Bilby, the informant claims to have learned of a, quote, plan to murder someone in Steuben County. September 19th, 8 days before Rhonda's death, he writes again of a plot to kill a woman to look accidental and decompose in the woods.
Then all of a sudden I come across this here, and I'm astonished.
And September 28th, the day after the death, the informant identifies the victim as a, quote, Rhoda Bibby. He sent a fourth and final letter to the DA dated October 5th. I have learned today that I failed in my attempt to stop this murder for hire plot.
Everything that he said in the letters prior to the murder taking place was detailed in the stuff that he sent to the district attorney's office.
But Sean says his defense lawyer, William Kelly, never told him any of this existed, a huge oversight or intentional negligence during trial.
There was my defense the whole time, not just of innocence, but there was proof to help me.
And if not proof, evidence to cause reasonable doubt among the jury.
All I want to do is prove my innocence, A. B, I want to prove that there is somebody else, and C, this cannot be hidden.
Finally, years later, Sean hopes with a new lawyer and an impending hearing.
It'll all come out to light someday.
In Alden, New York, Jane Park, WENY-TV News.
All right, well, there is an evidentiary hearing scheduled for Campbell on Monday, and Jane will have the latest developments after that hearing.
Convicted killer Sean Campbell is now waiting for a new public defender after his latest attorney withdrew from the case on Monday.
Joe Valley is that attorney's name, and he said it was his last resort to buy more time because prosecutors made a surprise statement a couple weeks earlier, didn't have time to adjust to that. WENY-TV's Jane Park has more in part 2 of Journey to Justice.
Sean Campbell's quest for a new trial is on hold for now. Monday's hearing was supposed to determine whether his trial lawyer William Kelly gave him ineffective counsel during his murder trial in 2005. Campbell says Kelly withheld letters from a prison inmate telling of a murder for hire plot that should have been the linchpin of his defense. Campbell's attorney, Joe Valley, tried to get an affidavit from Kelly stating he knew of the letters, and each time he hit a wall. But 2 weeks ago, Assistant DA Brooks Baker, who prosecuted Campbell, said everyone was privy to these letters, including Campbell.
It was discussed with Mr. Kelly in my presence at a conference during the time of the trial.
He says Campbell shrugged it off.
I watched Mr. Campbell shake his head and indicate that they were dismissed, so I don't think there's any value to these letters whatsoever. They weren't then, there aren't now.
Campbell maintains he knew nothing about the letters and says he would have never pleaded guilty had he known about them.
It was never turned over to me until after the sentencing. I was completely shocked. I had no idea it even existed.
And I find it curious that almost 2.5 to 3 years later is the first time we have a dead solid excuse for what was done, and it was never brought up before despite repeated requests to get that information.
And when Valley asked Monday for more time to explore this claim, the judge refused and ordered the hearing to proceed.
So I basically withdrew from representation to allow Sean to continue properly.
Baker maintains the letters wouldn't have worked in Campbell's favor anyway.
Fundamentally, they were from a pretty poor source.
But this alleged prison snitch came highly recommended by various district attorneys across the state. From Kings County, he was cooperative and provided invaluable information which enhanced the prosecution. A Bronx prosecutor writes, his testimony helped secure a conviction in the murder of a retired New York City police detective in 1997. And the Bronx assistant DA says this letter should express deep thanks to the inmate and our hope that favorable yet just treatment be ordered to him in your matters. Campbell says none of this reached him before he pleaded guilty, and he feels he's fighting a losing battle.
Nobody wants to listen to the fact that there's evidence proving there's somebody else involved, not me.
As it stands now, Sean Campbell is guilty in the eyes of the court of murdering Rhonda Bilby. Jane Park, WENY TV News.
Now, it could be weeks before the county assigns Campbell a new public defender. One big question remains, though. Why would anyone confess to murder when he didn't do it? Well, we're going to tackle that question next week in Part 3. Well, as we reported last week, convicted murderer Sean Campbell is back in prison, waiting for a new lawyer to try to get his appeal back to court. He maintains his innocence and eventually wants a new trial.
But the question remains, why would an innocent person confess to the ultimate crime? WENY TV's Jane Park explores that in Part 3 of Journey to Justice.
Convicted killer Sean Campbell clearly says,
I'm not the one who murdered Rhonda Bilby.
but he confessed to the crime in 2004, then pleaded guilty in 2005 and hasn't been able to take it back. Campbell says the day he confessed was brutal. 14 hours of interrogation, no sleep for 2 days, and he was denied a lawyer.
I was so mentally and emotionally beat down that I just could not think straight. I couldn't think past nothing. I just wanted to go to sleep.
When Campbell's mom went to see him later,
he looked like death warmed over. He was that bad.
We're told there's no video or transcript from Campbell's interrogation, so we don't know what exactly pushed Campbell, who maintains his innocence, over the edge. But experts give us an idea of what widely practiced modern police interrogation tactics look like.
They are designed to break down guilty suspects, but they break down innocent suspects as well.
They involve things like lying to people, telling people that people have said things that they haven't said, depriving people of sleep, depriving people of food, depriving people of bathroom breaks, appealing to their altruism, and all these kinds of things.
Professor Charles Brainerd of Cornell's Human Ecology Department worked on several false confession cases. He says innocent suspects often come to believe maintaining their innocence is futile, and confessing will result in a more lenient consequence.
I knew in my heart that the evidence would come back and prove that I didn't do it.
But after hours of questioning, feeling desperate and fatigued,
I said, just give it to me. I'll sign it. Fine. This is it. Just give it to me.
Campbell thought recanting his confession would be simple.
When they do their fingerprint and their blood and their hair and their DNA and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, when all that comes back, they're going to say, well, there's no way Mr. Campbell could have done it.
But that didn't happen, and prosecutors presented Campbell's confession as their strongest evidence.
In criminal cases, there is, by and large, no physical evidence. What are you left with? You're left with this. You're left with what comes out of people's mouths. That means you're left with memory,
which scientific literature has proven can be fallible. And in the eyes of jurors, one confession, true or false, is enough to erase all reasonable doubt. Jane Park, WENY TV News.
Now, this has been a very interesting series, but in no way are we doing it because we believe either way whether Sean Campbell is innocent or guilty. He is still guilty in the eyes of the court. We just thought it was important to note that false confessions do happen and often lead to convictions.